Welcome everyone to our first webinar of this third Friday. My name is Sandra Vidrio and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Business Center here in the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. Thank you so much everyone for joining us. We are excited to share with you some great information as to the process on how to form your own LLC. We have the team from New Business Community Law Clinic joining us today for this really great, insightful information. I want to remind everyone that we will be using the Zoom control features to interact. So make sure you leave your comments, especially your questions for a Q&A session later today. And we also have interpretation available in Spanish. So tenemos interpretación disponible en español. Y voy a invitar a Alex para que dé esas instrucciones.
Gracias. Buenos días a todos, o buenas tardes más bien. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en vivo en español durante esta reunión. Si desea escuchar la interpretación en español, haga clic en el botón de Interpretation, que significa interpretación, en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla de Zoom, donde está un icono de un globo terráqueo. Si se está uniendo a través de la aplicación Zoom en su teléfono, smartphone, seleccione el idioma haciendo clic en More, más. En los tres puntitos en la esquina inferior derecha de la pantalla, seleccione Language Interpretation. Luego elija Spanish y haga clic en Done. ¿Listo? Si desea escuchar solo a los intérpretes y no a los oradores originales, asegúrese de hacer clic en Mute Original Audio. Muchas gracias. Back to you, Sandra.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the announcement. And this is the agenda for today for our third Friday workshop. My name is Sandra Vidrio, and I also have my colleague Alicia joining the call. And we will be having a presentation provided by Bill Kell, at clinic director for the New Business Community Law Clinic at Berkeley Law. And we will end the presentation with a Q&A session. So please get ready to submit those questions or ask them live towards the end of the presentation. And I would like to share, if this is your first time joining our call, we have these regular legal webinars on the third Friday of each month. And I'll be sharing with you what the lineup looks like for the next Fridays. Our organization, the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, is here to help and serve our small business community, whether you're here in the city of Fresno, throughout Fresno County, throughout the state of California. We've been able to connect with many businesses since the start of our organization, especially during the pandemic. There are some new programming that will be made available in the upcoming weeks, so please be on the lookout for that information. Our team is here to provide you with our core services, our technical assistance, one-on-one consulting if you're looking to create a business plan or pivot your business plan into new services. We are here to help you. We also continuing our weekly webinars in addition to our programming that has been made available, and we can also connect you with microloan opportunities, whether it's with our organization, our community lenders, in addition to relief grants that will be starting in March 1st. So if you have any questions, please call our office, which appears here on the screen, 559-222-8705. And I'll make sure to leave our general information email to be able to connect with either one of our team members. And I have Alicia. Alicia, would you like to share some words and share about yourself and your role here with the foundation?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Alicia Aguirre. I'm the project coordinator at the foundation, and I am excited to be here. I just joined the team a couple months ago, and I'm working with David Preciado on, we're in charge of membership. So our organization has the opportunity to join us as members. Some of the member benefits include these networking meetings that we host every month, and we'll be having next week, Wednesday, the 23rd at 7:30 a.m. So if anyone is interested, you can just drop a comment in the chat and then I can give you the link to RSVP for it. But it'll be at Copper River, and again, it's at 7:30 a.m. Just an opportunity for everybody to get together, network, and kind of just meet new people here in the Fresno area.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you so much. And also, if you have any topics that you would like to hear in a future in one of our weekly webinars, please leave in the chat box, as both of us are preparing to our lineup for the springtime of 2022. And here is the lineup for those third Friday legal webinars that I had shared about. So next month on March 18, we will be having a presentation on commercial leasing. In the month of April, in honor of Financial Health Month, we will be having a topic regarding raising capital. And on May 20, we will be having a topic as to the legal side of operating a food business, whether you're a mobile vendor, a restaurant, catering, anything food related, this is the presentation you should attend to. And with that, I am now excited to welcome the team at Berkeley Law. I know I have the slides on my end, so I will be sharing those. So Belle, let me know to get started with that, right?
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thanks for joining us. I'm actually joining you from outside a Starbucks coffee shop because the place where I am, the internet is terrible. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. And I'm also helped today by Ashwara Tadobagi, NC Shao, and Piotr Kuznicki, excuse me. And we really appreciate you joining in with us today. We want to tell you all about LLCs, because LLCs are a really important kind of business entity that's maybe the kind of entity you want to do your business in. Okay, so let's see, without further ado, let's get those slides up. Thank you, Des. Desiree LaFleur is our deputy attorney, has been helping us with these things. Let's see, I can't see the slides yet. Go ahead, here we go.
Don't have, okay.
All right. Oh, very good. No, that's a later slide. Go back to the beginning, if you would. Okay, there we go. Yes, so this is the deck we're going to go over today. And of course, we can provide this to you through Sandra. Again, thank you, Sandra, for letting us provide these workshops through Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. All right, so first slide, let's set the agenda. So there's several things to cover when we want to think about forming a limited liability company. What is an LLC, by the way? What are the pros and cons? Who can form and operate an LLC? Can someone who's undocumented use an LLC to do their business? How do you form an LLC? How can LLCs connect with capital? What terms should be in the LLC operating agreement? And what if I need to change the LLC later? We're going to cover all of these questions going forward. And then just one caveat, next slide, or next animation. This is not substitute for legal advice. This is just a general overview of what you need to know about LLCs. If you actually want to get some coaching and template forms for forming your LLC, then get in touch with us through our office hours. We have a link at the end of the slide that you can get to our website, which is www.law.berkeley.edu/NBCLC. And then we can get you going in an individual consultation that will give you the legal advice that you might be looking for. All right, next slide. All right, NC Shao is going to take over here.
Yes, and you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
Hi, buenas tardes, todos. So let's begin with this question. What is a limited liability company? Generally speaking, a limited liability company, LLC, is a common business entity, and it is really popular. So it is formed by an agreement between one or more owners. By the way, so the owners in LLC are usually called members. And like a corporation, an LLC creates separation between the members and the business entity. So the members are usually not liable for the LLC's obligations, which corresponds to its name, limited liability. However, there are some exceptions, and my colleagues will cover it later on. Unlike a corporation, an LLC doesn't pay taxes for itself. That is, it doesn't pay tax for the whole entity. The LLC only files an informational return, reporting its income and how it distributes its profits to its owners. All profits will pass through from the entity to the members, and then the members will pay tax on their shares of the profits when filing their own individual tax returns. In the end, you might not know, Google is actually an LLC controlled by a corporation named Alphabet Incorporation. Next slide. Thank you, Bill. So let's now go to the advantages of an LLC. First of all, an LLC creates separation between you and the business. So the LLC owners can actually benefit from some kind of tax. So the LLCs can easily take on capital, like we have mentioned, and the members actually can benefit from a number of tax breaks, like the pass-through taxation policy we have discussed before, and also you can enjoy the deductions for the LLC can enjoy the deductions for business expenses, and also the ability to offset losses against other earned income. Next one, so becoming an LLC actually makes it easier to compete for a contractor jobs, because so there are actually a lot of companies trading on the independent contractors position. So the new California labor law, known as AB 5, actually has made it more difficult for companies to treat workers as independent contractors instead of full-time employees. In a way, this makes it difficult for the legitimate independent contractors to get a job. And LLC shows that you are actually independent and you can have your job without this concern. Besides, if you are undocumented, the LLC will allow you to legally earn profits, even if you don't have the legal right to work at all. Also, so finally, the formation itself, next one. Finally, the formation itself is quite flexible. So an LLC can easy to change, sell, convert into a corporation or dissolve. Okay, let's go to the disadvantage part. First of all, LLC must pay an annual minimum franchise fee tax of $800, regardless of income. However, there is a good news. So the California state actually waives franchise taxes in the first year. So it's good for you to start an LLC early in the year instead of like the end of the year. Also, LLC needs to pay a gross receipts tax if their earning is more than $250,000 US a year. Next one. So all LLC incomes passes to the owners, and this means you can't keep the income, you can't keep the profits inside the LLC. The members cannot hold the profits back to the LLC. If the LLC has profits, it has to pass through to the owners and it has to pay tax. Next one. So limited liability shield, as we have covered before, they only covers the LLC's obligations, which means if LLC takes on a loan or this, then only LLC is on hook if defaults. And some members may still be liable for their own personal negligences. Here is an example. Catering and LLC books a wedding. If catering serves bad food and guests get sick, guests can still sue catering personally. So there are actually other ways to pierce the liability shields, and my colleague Piotr is going to lead you to the next part.
I can't see.
Yes, thank you. So unfortunately, limited liability is not absolute, and California Corporation Code, same as in other corporations, provide that the court, in some exceptional circumstances, can hold members personally liable for LLC. For example, when they treat LLC assets as their own assets. For example, members commonly or pay personal expenses. When LLC fails to follow the LLC operating agreement, for instance, if members fail to have meetings, if it is required by the operating agreement. Other example is undercapitalization. So for instance, members start a car company with only $100 in the LLC bank accounts. Or when the LLC failed to transact personal business fairly with the LLC. This is example of members owns a space and rents it to the LLC at an inflated price. But it is worth to remember that any of these cannot be enough to pierce the corporate veil. So to help the members of LLC personal liable. So because usually the court will be looking for some proof that LLC cheat creditors. So they LLC acts unfair toward creditors. Thank you.
Good, good. Thank you, Piotr. Next slide, please. Yes, so I'm going to say a few things about who can form and operate an LLC. And what Piotr was saying, where of the corporate shield will come up if there's some cheating going on by the LLC, for example, defaulting on a loan or something like that. It's only in that situation where the court may look extra close at, did they treat this LLC as a separate entity? Did they form their, follow their formalities, things like that? Just to clarify that a little bit. Okay, so let's cover some things about who can form and operate an LLC. Okay, well, anybody, pretty much any adult can form an LLC. In fact, entities can own LLCs, as Enzi was saying. Google is an LLC that's owned by another company. And by the way, you should know that entities, actually I'll go back to this in just a second. If you have several entities, like several corporations, you could knit them together into a larger LLC as sort of an umbrella over all of those different entities there, you see? So it's very flexible. You can use it in a bunch of different ways. Now, here's one very important limitation on the LLC. That is the professionals who require a license to do their business cannot form LLCs. Generally, that is the case. So if you're an engineer, there are only certain engineers, because they have to use their engineering license, can form LLCs. Most of them can't, you see. So the way you figure this out, it's a little complicated, but you basically have to look and see if your business, your license that is required to do your business, is found in what's called the Business and Professions Code of the California statutes. Okay, so if it's found in the Business and Professions Code, things like engineers, accountants, lawyers, those sorts of things, yeah, can't be an LLC. All right. Now, it may come up, you may look, and and you'll say to yourself, here's an example. We had somebody who was a court interpreter, okay? And she knew that she needed to be certified as a court interpreter there. All right, well, we looked, we didn't see it in the Business and Professions Code, but she said, no, I'm still being, certified. Can I still do the LLC? Well, what we did was we looked that up. And what it means is that professional services, again, are these skill sets that are needed for the license. And so what we determined after this was that an interpreter, it's not like she's providing advice. It's more that she's just, I shouldn't say just, but is, thank you to our interpreter. The interpreter is taking the words of others and trying to translate that into another language. It's not like she's changing them or giving advice in the middle of it. So they wouldn't be called what would be called professional services. Okay, no pejorative intended here. It's simply that if you are like advising somebody as to what they should do, that would qualify as what would we say professional services there. So even if you aren't in the Business and Professions Code and you're advising somebody, chances are you're not going to be able to do an LLC. All right, but let's go to the next slide, or next thing. You can check this link here for which professions do require a license in the state of California. This is a way to figure it out. And you also might, if you got your license from somebody, let's say it's from the, I don't know, Podiatrist Association, you could go probably to the Podiatrist Association and say, hey, do I have to be can I be an LLC or not? And they'll probably tell you. All right, next slide. All right, here's an important point. Can someone who is undocumented use an LLC to do their business? Absolutely, yes. Okay, because anybody in the US can own a business regardless of immigration status. I mean, Donald Trump owns plenty of businesses in Dubai and is not a citizen of Dubai. So this is a vehicle that you can use to do your business. Somebody should turn their, somebody could mute themselves. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, next. So people who form LLCs can legally earn profits from the business, even if you do not have the right to work. Next. Being named as a business owner on a public record has no legal consequence with immigration authorities. ICE is not looking for you to see if you've registered a business or not. Okay, next. But here's an important point. When you do your LLC, if you form an LLC, make sure that in your operating agreement, you make it clear that you are a profit sharer. That's what you are. You are taking profits from the business, you're deducting business expenses from the income. Your net income is what you earn. It's not that you have a salary. It's not that you are earning compensation from your labor. That's not what you are doing. You are a leader of this LLC, and your know-how and everything that you put into the business besides your time is what earns you your profit. Okay, next. So that's what I was just saying there. It's your know-how, it's everything you give to the business. It's not measured in hours, okay? So the last thing you should know though, is that this does not provide a path to citizenship, unfortunately. It only provides you an ability to earn money, legally in our country, okay? Now, if you're facing deportation, it actually could help you, because if you're employing other people, and if you were deported, those people would lose their jobs. That could be a reason not to deport you, okay? So that's something else to think about. All right, now we've kept you in suspense all this time. How do you actually form this LLC, okay? So let's cover that. And I'm sorry, Ashwara, you were going to cover that for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor. So how do you form an LLC? It's a fairly simple process. We need to file what is called the Form LLC-1, which is your Articles of Incorporation. And to finish the process, you should prepare and execute a written operating agreement. We are, of course, happy to share a draft, and please reach out to us via email, which we will share again towards the end. Now, going back to the operating agreement, there are usually three types of arrangements. The first one is a manager-managed, wherein the daily workings of the LLC are managed by the manager, and
Excellent.
this manager may be an employee or member of the LLC. The second is the member-managed. Here, all the decisions with respect to the everyday functioning of the LLC are made by the members. And the third is a single-member LLC, which is one person can form an LLC by himself or herself. And here the lone member or the owner is the one who makes all the decisions and keeps the profits.
Good. Next slide.
Over to you.
Oh, I'm doing this one here. Okay, S, how can LLCs now connect with capital? Okay, well, so you might ask, how can it take on investment? All right, well, here it is. With members are investing in the company by giving their contributions to the company, or you could get another investor like an angel or something like that. You would just add them into the operating agreement and make them part of the LLC. Or if you wanted to do an outside investor, okay, then the outside investor could simply arrange an obligation with the LLC itself using what's called a convertible note. And what that is essentially the investor says, I'm going to give you a loan, right, at this early beginning stage of your business here, and you need to pay it back. But if I want to, at some point in the future, or maybe when you get a new, another round of investment or something like that, when we know what the value of the company is, I'm going to convert that loan into shares of the LLC, you see. So there's two ways to do it with investors, okay? One is to actually make them part of the LLC, or to make them into an obligation of the LLC, like a loan. But again, investor doesn't really want a loan with you. Instead, what they want is a share of your company, and that's what the convertible note is for. Okay, the other way to do it is taking on debt. Here you go. So debt, you can get debt from members. Members can make loans to the company or outside lenders. You'd use a promissory note in this situation. That's what a loan is. And normally a loan, you'd want to have what is the loan amount, what is the interest rate, what is the maturity date. These are things that you want to figure out for a debt. And of course, watch it, personal guarantees. Remember that limited liability shield is going to work for you, except if you personally guarantee that debt going forward. So in that case, you would be on the hook personally for it. Okay, next. right, I think Ashwara, you were going to cover this.
Yes. So I know we talked about an operating agreement. Now let's get into what must be included in this operating agreement. The first thing we need to keep in mind is that this agreement must be in a written form. And while the agreement can be changed over time, there are three main terms that must be included. The first is management. This will detail how the LLC itself is managed. The second being profit distribution, which is how are the profits going to be divided between the members or the owners of the LLC. And the third one is contributions, which refers to your capital contributions. Where is the capital coming from and how is it coming in, everything with respect to that. There's also the link, which lists the terms that may be read into the agreement as per the law. So what this is if we don't include these terms listed here, they will be read into the agreement as per the law. So we highly recommend including these terms the way you want them to. Thank you.
Good, good.
Back to you, Professor.
Thank you. So other things to include in the operating agreement. Go ahead. Next slide. Thank you. Contributions. Okay, let's cover a few things about contributions. No, leave this item. Thank you. Okay, usually contributions go into something called a member's capital account. It's like their bank account with the LLC, all right? But they're not supposed to take things out of it, all right? This is the money that they put in or the property that they put in that is designed to say, okay, well, look, this is what I am putting into the company to help it grow and stuff, but I don't get it. I don't get it back usually. Well, they might get it back. It is the thing that you can make the LLC pretty much arrange this however you want, but generally capital accounts are not touched until somebody leaves. Okay, so you should require some amount. Remember that thing that Piotr was saying about undercapitalization? Yeah, if you're be able to honor the damages or the losses that people have. Yeah, we're not getting into distributions yet. Put that back if you would. Contributions, are there to cover the debts of the company going forward. So you wouldn't want to put in, maybe $100 would be fine if it was a crochet business. But if you're starting a car company, you're going to need thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in there just to cover the claims that could happen with your car company. All right. So do all have to contribute the same way? Well, here's an important point. The LLC is flexible about this. Okay, somebody might not have a lot of cash, but they have a lot of expertise. Okay, well, you could say that's your capital contribution is being our, oh, here you go. You're an accountant. You provide accounting services to us, and that'll be your contribution going forward or something like that. Or you have intellectual property. You have a patent or something like that. Have all of those be contributions to the company going forward, and then you get your profit share based on what you gave, okay? Usually. Will members ever be required to contribute more? That's a question that you might want to answer in your operating agreement. Will people have to say, we need $50,000 more. Okay, everybody chip in. At that point, you should know whether you have to chip in or not, of course. All right, now one thing you should know is usually there's no tax consequences for the member contributions. Why? It's because you're getting back the same value in the company. It's just like actually putting money into the bank. There's no tax consequences when you put money in the bank, because when you put $100 in, you get a receipt for $100, and it's the same thing, you see. But here you go. That could be a problem though if, for example, you put in a car that's worth $2,000 and then you got a $5,000 value for your ownership share. That's a problem, because suddenly there you see you put in 2,000, you got 3,000 more back. Then that could be taxed by the IRS. Okay, certainly talk to a tax accountant before you make some changes and do some complicated stuff. Okay, all right, now we're to distributions. Thank you. Let's do the whole slide. Go ahead. All right, now your distributions, again, these are the profit distributions that you're having. Usually these go to what's called an income account. all right? An income account is more like a checking account. So it means when you get your income, yeah, you could take it out however you want, you know, pay your bills, do whatever you need to do. So you're going to have these two kinds of accounts to distinguish, you know, what are the funds you are free to spend, like income, like, you know, where you're being compensated, or the capital account that's basically your share of the wealth of the company there, you see. All right, so should you be paid according to your contribution? Well, here you go. The LLC is very flexible about that, you see. If you're putting in a third of the capital, then you should get a third of the profits, right? Well, some people would say, maybe not. Maybe instead it should be according to need. You know, you need more money. You know, you would get the profit share even if you weren't able to put as much contribution in or something like that. Oh, here's another little thing you should know is that sometimes, of course, with LLC's life, you are experiencing losses. Well, here's an important thing. LLC losses pass through to the members just like profits do. And here you go, and what do you do with those losses? You can use that to offset other income that you get from other sources. That's a really cool thing. So it's almost like at the beginning of the company's life, there is an extra losses that it gets, okay? Now, here's the thing. If some of you, let's say a group of 3 people in the LLC, and 2 people have outside income, but the third one doesn't have any outside income. Well, if you get losses, you shouldn't allocate losses to the person who doesn't have any income because they can't do anything with it. Instead, allocate it to the first 2 people who have outside income, you see? So again, the LLC is flexible in this way, and you can set up for distributions pretty much however you want. Generally, distributions should be set up at a particular time, like monthly or even annually or weekly you could do. Now, here's another thing. In your capital account, okay, some people might say, well, I want to borrow some money from the LLC. Maybe they need to pay something, the LLC can give them a loan. All right, well, if they borrowed from their LLC, well, maybe they shouldn't get a distribution until they pay that loan back. So maybe, or a portion of their distribution should be going to pay that loan back to the company, all right? Now, there is this other thing you should know, and it's called setting up an interest holder in the LLC. And what this would be for, it would be, let's say that you, let's say you have a daughter, I got one, who you want to give some income to, okay, on a regular basis. You don't need it yourself. Okay, well, you could set up in the LLC operating agreement that says, well, any distributions to me will go to my daughter. Okay, that's no problem to do that. The one thing you can't give to the daughter, though, is your management duties. You can't give her a vote in the LLC. Okay, so that's what's called an interest holder. Again, just getting an income stream does not convey voting rights. Okay, next. A couple more things on what the operating agreement should include. Management. Okay, well, management, populate there, here we go. The main thing here is you'd have to think about, again, if everybody's sharing the responsibilities equally in a member-managed LLC, well, then it's pretty clear, you know, everybody has to have consent for everything. They're always working in management together, okay? Well, but then if you have a manager-managed LLC, this is where the manager might be making these, you know, day-to-day decisions and stuff. That's where you'd have to set up, okay, well, what can they do without the members' consent? Well, we usually say, you know, the manager should be able to spend some money for the LLC because they're doing the everything on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, maybe they should be able to spend $500 without consent of everybody else. Also, you might want to, just with some financial controls, beyond that, make sure that 2 people, you know, get to sign checks so that one person can't just write a whole bunch of checks to themselves, you see. All right, but what you should know is generally all members need to consent to anything out of the ordinary in the course of business. That would be like admitting a new member. Yeah, if you're in an LLC, you know, another person shouldn't be able to bring in Bernie Madoff or something like that, who you wouldn't want in your LLC. Everybody gets to decide about that. All right, taking on debt, that's another thing, because it could be, you know, something that you wouldn't be personally on the hook for, but is something that would dramatically change the value of the LLC. Dissolving the LLC might be another one. So those are some management decisions you might want to think about, and again, you write these in the operating agreement, then everybody knows what needs to be done. Okay, next. But some other terms to address, here's some that we've seen over time are probably good to address, like this first one. How much time are members expected to spend on the LLC? It can make people feel a little resentful if they're doing full time, more than full time, and somebody else is just doing quarter time, but it's not acknowledged at the beginning. You see. Certainly how disputes would be resolved, probably a good idea to have a mediation service ready to jump in on that, or just a trusted person that all the members give credibility to, who could step in and at some points help resolve those disputes. I'm not talking about arbitration, somebody who would impose a judgment on you, but just somebody to help listen to each other and work things out. Okay. Here's an interesting one. Can members be removed? Oh, yeah, you might want to put some things in there about, if they go bankrupt, or if they commit a felony or something, violent felony, there might be reasons for you not to want to associate with that member anymore. So you might want to put in some terms at the beginning about who can be removed. Okay, now here's probably the most important of this group of terms to figure out is when people leave, how do you cash them out? Okay, you've got your capital account. Remember, you got some cash or property in there. Here's the usual formula that people do. Okay, you think about your initial contribution amount that's in your capital account. Usually you don't get, like if you gave them a truck, you don't get the truck back. It's usually the LLC will give you the value of the truck, okay? But you could always write it in, I have a special painting or something I need to have back. Of course, you could do that if you wanted to. All right, so you take that amount that's in their capital account, you'd add to it the unpaid profit share up to the last day, but then you would, potentially deduct any loan that they took from the LLC, all right? Or if they gave a loan to the LLC themselves, they would get paid back for that, all right? So that would be what they would leave with. And usually you get about a year to pay that off, so you don't have to do it all at once. Now, here's a very important point. Now, if you think about it, think about Google LLC that NC talked about there. What would be the value of Google LLC? Oh my gosh, it's certainly a lot more than what is in the bank of Google LLC, because it's a huge, amazing company that everybody would love to buy if they could. All right, so now you're talking about an LLC at a smaller level here, okay? Is the value of your LLC the only what's in the bank account? Well, maybe after a few years, your LLC is a little more valuable than that. It's got a name, it's got an ongoing stream of income. Somebody would buy that thing for more than just what was in the bank account. Okay, that's what's called goodwill. Goodwill, okay? That means that there's a value of the company beyond its assets. And that's where, if you're leaving this company, any person who's leaving Google LLC, who's a member, is going to say, I want a piece of the value of this company, not just what's in the bank. And they might need an appraisal. It might need to be somebody coming along saying, okay, I've compared this to other companies, and this is what you could probably sell this company for at this point. So think about adding goodwill, a share of goodwill at the end of the, for people to be able to cash out at the end. All right, next slide. All right, here's the last slide, guys. What if you need to change the LLC later? Well, it's really easy, actually. California, let's say, now we're not talking about dissolving. Dissolving is fairly easy. But if we're talking about changing the LLC to a corporation, then yes, California corporation, LLC to corporation is really fairly easy. It's a little processing, a paper form. It costs $150. Zoom Zam, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you'll be a new corporation. There's also the same process in Delaware. Next slide. If you wanted to change a Delaware LLC to a Delaware Corp, they have the same thing. And in most states, they do have this, so that if you were in Nevada or other places, yeah, a little paper form thing. But if you don't have a paper form thing, then it's a little more cumbersome process. You actually have to open the new entity, transfer the assets from the LLC to the new entity, and then close the old entity, you see. So those are the main things about changing to the LLC into a corporate form, which, you know, some investors really want to see. A corporation won't give to an LLC. It's easy to go to another entity if you need to. All right, I think that's all we got here, right? Last slide. Last slide. There we go. Hooray, questions. Let's go to some questions. And as we said, let's check those in the chat that people have maybe put in over time. But the main thing is you got this. Oh, go back one more time. Sorry, I just want to, there we go. The website to sign up for services is www.law.berkeley.edu/NBCLC. Great, great. Email, if you need to reach us, is newbusinesslaw@berkeley.edu. Also check out our online legal library for entrepreneurs that has many helpful, lay-friendly legal resources for you at ollielegal.com, online legal library for entrepreneurs. That's Ollie. And we are also active on Facebook and Instagram too. Okay, let's go to the chat. Let me see. You know what? I might be able to open my computer to look at the chat here. Maybe you could, Sandra. Yeah, why don't you read us some questions?
Moderate the chat. Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you to Bill and the team at Berkeley Law for today's presentation. There's some great questions here on the chat, so I'll just go from the order that they were submitted. So first one here is, I own a beauty salon. I've thought of changing it to an LLC. Does this mean I change it to an LLC? I won't pay any taxes?
Oh, okay. I'm assuming you were a sole
proprietor.
Did she say that? Sole proprietor. Yes. If you change from a sole proprietorship to an LLC, there are no consequences of changing. But when you become that LLC, of course, you're going to have to start paying that $800 a year franchise tax in the second year, of course. I suppose, let me see if there's any assets that you gave from the sole proprietorship to the LLC. No, because, you know, if you had like equipment or other things that you owned as a sole proprietor, once you put it in the LLC, that again is just you giving value to the LLC that you're going to get back because you'll have a comparable share of the LLC. So no, I don't believe there would be any tax consequences to that other than having to start paying that franchise tax in the second year.
Perfect, thank you. And how about?
Oh,
yes.
Wait a minute. But you should check. Did she say that she did hair or nails or stuff like that?
They did not specify, but if they can.
Okay. Do double check that thing about the license though, because if you're needing to use your license in your business, make sure it's not in what's called the Business and Professions Code of the state of California. If that's the case, I mean, I've heard of lots of people doing, you know, hair, nails, other things in LLC. So it's probably going to be okay, but do check it out. If it's in the Business and Professions Code, you're probably not going to be able to use an LLC to do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And there's a question underneath as to how about a professional who has a degree in business administration? Does that require a license? So the person that asked that question, they can, if you're still in the call, you can ask it live.
Well, I think I can respond to it. Just having a degree doesn't have any difference for an LLC. I mean, it's wonderful to have a degree, but it's a license that is the main thing. So if you're a licensed accountant, for example, my understanding is an accountant can't operate in an LLC. Or you're a licensed, I have a JD degree, I'm a licensed attorney, I can't operate in an LLC. What you'd have to do in that situation, if you did have a license, would be to probably, well, you could be a sole proprietor, you could do a partnership, but if you wanted that limited liability shield, you'd have to open a corporation. And by the way, corporations, there's two kinds to know about. One would just be a general, regular corporation. There are things called professional corporations. And what's the difference? The professional corporation is like what we as lawyers would do. And that is that every owner of the corporation is also a member of the licensed profession. you see. So if you, and we did this recently for somebody who had the choice. She was an engineer. She could do either a professional corporation and have all of the owners of the corporation be engineers, or, and she wanted to do it this way, just be a regular corporation. Then you can make some family members, you know, board members if you want. The main thing is that any of the work of the entity has to be overseen by the person with the license, you see.
Perfect, thank you. And there was a question before simply saying how much is an LLC? And then there was a follow-up response by an individual saying it, you know, I paid 400 plus for my LLC. So can you clarify the process as to how much it is that you're actually paying to the state of California Secretary of State versus paying someone to do the job?
Like LegalZoom or another lawyer or stuff. Yes, it's actually relatively easy to form your own LLC. And if you did that, then the only fee you would pay is a state fee for that, which is $70. Sorry to the person who was $400, but for you, you know, hopefully they gave you an operating agreement that's working for you, and hopefully they gave you some extra coaching and stuff. But if you go on the Secretary of State's website and you just look up LLC, it'll take you to the form that you need to fill in. It's called as Ashwara said, it was the form LLC-1, and you can actually file it online. In fact, if I wanted to, I could form my LLC today and go online to the Secretary of State's office. We put it in the PowerPoint, the link to it, but you could probably find it. Just look for LLC online Secretary of State, and then they'll give you the link to that. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And then the follow-up question to that is, once the LLC is formed, what is the process to change the name in the case that they need to change it? Would it be like starting a new entity, or is it just name change that happens?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, to just change the name, I'm assuming you're not talking about changing it into a corporation or something like that. No, so just if you want to change the name, there's two-step process there probably. You'd have to amend it at the state level. So you would amend what's called the Articles of Organization. That's the LLC-1 form we were talking about. You would just put in an amendment to that, and I believe the amendment costs $30, I'm pretty sure. But you can do that online as well, that's fine. But that's not going to be enough, because you may have registered your LLC locally, you know, with what's called a doing business as form or a fictitious business name form. In that situation, you're probably going to have to then republish it. Remember, if you do a doing business as form or a fictitious business name form, you actually have to put a notice in the paper, in the local publication, that you are now, you know, operating as an LLC in that jurisdiction. Okay, well, I've heard that costs like $80 or $100 or $50 here or there. So you'll also have to go to your local government where you filed that thing and say, okay, now I want to change the name. Then they'll probably say you're going to have to repost it, you know, publicize it again. So.
Perfect, thank you. And I have a question. We have a question here for a business owner that has a sole proprietor business, but they also have an LLC, and they want to know about the process for an EIN. Should they create an EIN for both entities, even though one's sole prop, the other one's LLC?
Yeah, generally you want an EIN for both entities, both your sole proprietorship and then for your EIN, for your LLC. So you just go to the IRS. Now there's a number of different services that will file this for you for a fee, and I don't know why people would do that for a fee. I guess making money, because if you go on the IRS website, they will direct you to a free online service to get your EIN, and that's where you get it from.
Perfect.
So just put in IRS EIN online, and just making sure it's the IRS, because there are some really tricky companies that put IRS in their name or something like that, and to get through business, but it should be through the IRS.
Thank you.
Or one of its authorized agents. Yeah.
Yes, make sure if these websites that they end in .gov, right?
There you go.
And then there's during the presentation you spoke about you gave the reference as to, you know, becoming an LLC and forming to a more legal entity, formal entity, such as a type of corporation. But what if there's, for example, we have a client here that an attendee that their business is a print shop and they do wrapping on trucks, they create logos, and they're currently registered as a corporation, but they're looking to switching to an LLC, and they wanted to see if that's a good fit.
If you want to separate office hour, we can probably say more of whether this is a good fit for your business, but just in terms of the process, what you would do is you would make an amendment. Well, let me see. There is an easy process to create a corporation out of an LLC, but going the other direction, I'm not actually sure whether there is an easy process. It's more common for an LLC to go into a corporation than the other way around. So if you send me your email, Sandra, if you could send his email, I can look that up for you and figure that out. But if there isn't an easy process, then what happens is you would have to pretty much close down the corporation and then use the assets to start the LLC. What you probably want to do is form the LLC first, take the corporation's assets, put it in the LLC, close the corporation, do the final tax return and dissolve the corporation, and then you could go forward. But one thing you should know is that any outstanding obligations of an entity before it changes into another entity pretty much have to be solved. So if you have a lawsuit outstanding, they're not going to let you close your corporation until that's resolved. But those are contracts can always be transferred, but something like a lawsuit, you wouldn't be able to be transferred.
Perfect. Thank you. And we have here 3 examples of individuals that are looking to know the process of becoming an LLC. But one of the questions here is someone that's looking into launching a business, doing HR and payroll consulting services.
Okay.
And they're wondering what licenses, what are some general licenses that they will be needing?
I don't know if there are particular licenses for HR, but there is a link in the PowerPoint here you can go to that does identify what kinds of professions need to have a license. So I would check that. I would certainly go at the state level to see, something like HR manager or something like maybe HR manager license, put it in the Google search engine and see, but I have not heard that an HR manager in particular has to have a license. I don't think so.
And then
sure.
Yeah, and then part of that question also is, I know there's companies that live within the city limits, but sometimes they create their LLC without looking with their city to see if they need a business tax certificate. So maybe that could be another start. Check with your local government.
Oh, you mean about whether I'm sorry, check with the local government about what?
About obtaining their business tax certificate.
Oh, yes, of course. Local governments, sometimes they'll need to get like a business license fee or some kind of business taxes or stuff to be done. Yeah, you always want to check when you're doing your business with the local government, both the city and the county, to see because sometimes you have business licenses for both, in fact. And some of them just need you to register and let them know through a DBA that you're doing business, and they don't actually, take a yearly chunk from you.
Thank you. And there's two questions here about I think they will be perfect candidates for office hours. One of them is, can a commercial trucking company be an LLC? And then the second one is, if I want to sell clothing, specifically Zumba clothing, resell, and they open an LLC or a corporation?
Yeah, the latter one, I don't think there's any trouble being an LLC for for a retail business. That should be just fine. But then sometimes truckers need licenses. I would double check that link that was in the PowerPoint that we had there. Or again, both of these folks, if you have a particular question about your own business, do please sign up for one of our office hours here, or use the email to get in touch with us too. We can set up a time to talk with you.
And then the other question that we see here is regarding the visa categories mentioned during the presentation. Does that mean that someone that wants to set up an LLC, they need to obtain their H-1B visa?
No, you don't need to do that at all. Again, if you are wanting to be sponsored as an H-1B, the thing is, H-1B could give you a path to citizenship. That's the important part of that. And so that's where there is a way. It's kind of complicated, and you might want to talk with us directly. There's a complicated way that you could set up your own business and have the business sponsor you as for an H-1B. There is a way to do that. It's complicated though, because essentially you could set up the business, but you wouldn't be able to control the business because you have to be able to be hired or fired. It's like you can't make the business your own sort of, how would I say it? You have to have some independence from the business leadership as to decide whether to sponsor you as an H-1. You see, so do contact us if you want to do it that way, because again, that would be, you know, even better, because then you would have this path to citizenship. But if you're, you know, regardless of your immigration status, if you want to start doing a business, an LLC is probably a good thing for you, because again, that provides you the ability to earn profits and not wages. You know, it's not something that needs to be under the table or anything like that, because you are, you know, think of it as you're earning money just like Donald Trump does from Dubai. Okay. And he has no trouble doing it. You shouldn't have any trouble doing it, but it doesn't create that path to citizenship, as we said. The H-1 is the way to go for that. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. And that's part of those benefits that you shared earlier in the presentation about becoming an LLC. And as we continue here the conversation, we have some questions regarding corporations. So there's one of the questions here is an S Corp a single owner corporation, or is it can also be multi-member under S Corp?
Yes. So an S corporation, what you know is that a corporation has two ways of setting up its tax arrangements. Okay, one is called an S arrangement, which means that the corporation is taxed just like a partnership or an LLC, this pass-through thing we've been talking about here. So an S corporation could set up to have the same limited liability shield as a corporation or an LLC, but be taxed like an LLC. So that means that the income would flow through directly to the shareholders of the the S corporation, and then they would pay tax on it. The S corp itself wouldn't pay any tax going forward. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, another question it sounds like is, could a single person be an S corporation? Yes, I believe that's true, because in the state of California, if you're a single shareholder, I mean, meaning a corporation with no other shareholders but you, yes, you can be a single board member, president, treasurer, secretary, all of the positions that a corporation would provide, and be the sole shareholder of that thing. That works. It gets a little more complicated as you may add more people. You can be, if it's two shareholders, then you have to have at least two people on the board. I think it's actually two or more. You have to have at least two people on the board. And so I guess what I'd say to you is that the problem with this is with an S corporation is it's kind of hard to keep up with the formalities. Remember that thing Piotr was saying, was that when a company gets sued, like a corporation gets sued, you know, the people on the other side are going to go, oh, we want that liability shield to come down. We want to get through it and get to you personally. Well, you want to have a nice corporate shield. And the way you do that is by actually having meetings. And I know it sounds silly, with yourself, you know, have some bylaws, have something that says, you know, I am the secretary treasurer and this, and I'm taking meeting minutes when I'm doing my meetings with myself. Yes, it's that kind of formality that you have to keep up if you're a single member corporation, you see. So again, that's what's called an S corporation. The only difference with a C corporation, which is the other one, is that that's that thing that NC was talking about. The corporation actually files a tax return and pays tax on its income. And you might ask, well, why wouldn't you do an LLC all the time? Why wouldn't you avoid that tax? Well, the reason is, as many corporations do, they don't distribute profits. They don't want to distribute profits. They want to keep the profits all to themselves. And so you'd have just one level of tax, which is a corporate tax. I believe it's 21% right now. So the corporation would pay tax on its income, but then it would be able to keep all of that wealth and maybe distribute it to a shareholder sometime down the way. But that's where a company can really grow its wealth and have investors who will, you know, grow it even more. And that's why investors don't tend to like the pass-through entities very much. One is they usually have to do a tax return. That's not so good. And then for them, they don't like that. And then the other thing is, then they also might be prevented from being a pass-through entity because they are like a nonprofit, for example. A nonprofit would have trouble with pass-through taxation because it would mess up their tax-exempt status.
Thank you. And the last question is, what advice would you give to a sole proprietor business that is looking to form an entity, whether it's and they're exploring their options as to becoming an LLC single member, an S corporation, or a C corporation?
Ooh, well, there's lots of really important sort of forks in the road there that you'd want to get some counsel on. This would be one that you definitely want to set up with us, because what we would do is weigh with you the different options that you'd have. And, you know, what we covered today was a pretty good rendition of why an LLC might work for you, but it may be that you have some specific issues that a corporation would be better for. So we're really happy to advise you individually on that. But, you know, a number of people just sort of say, well, if I'm a sole proprietorship, I want to take a step up in terms of creating limited liability. Yeah, an LLC is a good way to start doing that. And again, if you find later you want to be a corp, then you can, you know, quickly transition into that. I will end with this, and that is in this, how many years? 13 years, 14 years, maybe 15 years now, I guess, of the clinic. We have only formed 2 non-limited liability entities. And what I mean by that is they told us what they were doing, and we always said, almost, you know, 99% of the time said, get a limited liability entity. The only ones that we did was a used bookstore and a bow tie company. And what was the thing about that was we couldn't figure out how a used bookstore or a bow tie company could kill anybody. So you wouldn't be subject to a major lawsuit in that. I suppose a used bookstore shelf could fall over on somebody. I suppose you could do a Walt Disney tie, and then Walt Disney would sue you out of existence. But generally, you know, most people, something can go wrong in their business and hurt somebody, and, you know, it's not your fault. You just need you need to have an entity, and you need to have a lot of good insurance, and that's the way to take care of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for today's presentation, and to the team. And make sure to leave your email in the chat box if you want to receive a copy of the slides for today. Of course, everyone that signed up will be receiving a copy of the presentation, the webinar recording, and the slides. So make sure you check in with us for our next webinar, which will be taking place on March 18. And the topic is on commercial leases. Thank you so much. I hope you'll have a wonderful weekend. Take care, and we'll hope to see you next month.
And thanks to the interpretation, thank you so much, and to our students, Llc, Ashwara, and Piotr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Good night.